the NFL Week 2 action. An interesting one right here between the Bears and the Bengals. Now, let's set this game up here because we do have some decent line movement in this one. Pinnacle opened up offshore at -3. They were actually down to that 1 range, now sitting at 2, Kyle. 4.5 here at the FanDuel Sportsbook in New Jersey. And now we're seeing it like those 2.5s now across the board, 45.5. Cincinnati looked good last week. They beat an overhyped, I guess, Vikings team, bottled up Dalvin Cook, which is pretty amazing in this. They weren't all that great on third down, going 3rd and 14, talking about the Bengals here. There was not a lot to love from the Chicago Bears. But I have to tell you, with these cheap prices under 3, you're expecting the Bengals to go on the road and pick up a victory. I'm not sure they can do that. But one thing I think I am decently sure of is the Bengals should get into the 20s here and approach their team total.
Yeah, I actually love that Bengals team total the more I look at it. Both of these secondaries were 2 of the most beat-up secondaries in Week 1. Obviously, the Rams did whatever they wanted against Chicago. That secondary is bad for Chicago. Let's just call it what it is. Jalen Johnson, Marquis Christian gave over 1.2 fantasy points per route ran against in the slot. That is astronomical. It's massive. That means he was absolutely torched, and he was, by Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods and whoever else they put in the slot. And the Bengals, look, they did win the game. I thought they looked good against Dalvin Cook. Obviously, it's Kirk Cousins will have the inflated numbers, but he can never make it happen when it matters most. And that was the concern going in the entire time. But their secondary, too. We're talking about Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton, and Eli Apple. They're the only trio of corners last week, which I think will surprise people, who gave up more than 1/3 of a point per fantasy route ran against, and they all gave up a completion on 20% or more of the routes ran against them when they were targeted. So both secondaries are vulnerable here. I do think the Bengals are live dogs coming into Chicago. For you Bears backers, I get it. Andy Dalton, early window at home, revenge tour, the Red Rifle revenge tour. I get it. And this one scares me to pick a side. I do think the Bengals are live dogs. The one thing standing out to me, I think we get over 45 points here. I think both teams can score on the opposing defense. These are not great defenses. The Bears are not the monsters of the Midway. This defense is going to give up points all year long. Both teams should be able to score. Normally, I would fade Andy Dalton, but again, this is the early window at home. This is when Andy Dalton shines. This is what kept him in the league all those years on the East Coast in Cincinnati, is playing in that early window at home. He's actually fairly decent. He's not as bad as he is on primetime. Sides are really, really tough here. I do think the Bengals are live dogs, and right now I just kind of like the idea of taking them at that plus money on the money line if you want to do that. But for me, the best bet in this game is the over 45. I think both teams score.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in this game. The only thing I'm worried about here, taking a team total with Cincinnati, is that offensive line. They give up 5 sacks last week to the Minnesota Vikings. Khalil Mack's in town. Need to slow him down in this one. But that secondary, not as elite as it's been in the past couple years for the Bears. And I do like the wide receiving core. Basically, what I'm saying is I like the skill positions all together for the Cincinnati Bengals, Kyle. 3 good wide receivers, decent tight end, really good running game. I think it all makes sense because Joe Burrow looked good last week. He had 20 of 27, very efficient passing performance. I think he could do it again against the Bears. You do need a little bit of a running mate, so I'm expecting something out of Dalton. Hey, Andy Dalton, throw the football downfield, buddy. You know what you do with the pass? You see a guy deep 30 yards down the field, you let it fly. You don't take the Alex Smith route and dump everything down. That's how you score 14 points in an NFL game, and you come up with another loss. We'll see what happens in that game between the Bengals and the Bears.